using Slack because they don't really have a great chat. So
Right.
gotcha. Thank you.
You guys like to click on this? Sorry.
Yeah, what was the name of the previous one? Was Start Consulting? Was that
Star Consult?
Star Consulting? Okay.
I have to tell you guys stuff, I'm sorry. Hello, Internet Explorers. Welcome to the 24-hour preliminary round of CoMIS 2023. My name is Henry Jonas. Today's presentation will be judged by JJ Parker, Mike McFarland, Mike Stiefel, Eric Selvig, and Ellen Miller. Will have 25 minutes in total, 15 minutes of protected presentation time and 10 minutes of Q&A. During the protected presentation time, judges are not permitted to interject and ask questions. If you finish your presentation before 15 minutes end, you will still only have 10 minutes of the Q&A. There will be a hard cutoff at 15 minutes, and we will be giving you a time warning when 3 minutes, 1 minute, and 30 seconds are left via paper, and then papers up. So you're good to go.
Hello, we are Internet Explorers. I want to take a minute to introduce ourselves. I'm Pranathi Luru.
I'm Shrivani Gansavarku, and I'm Bhavya Sherlock. So a few years ago, my dad was working a job as a data entry analyst. He worked at that job and he noticed it was very manual. He had to manually enter data. He saw he had to do many repeated tasks that were redundant. And not only was this taking a toll on him mentally, but it was also affecting his role efficiency, right? It was affecting the company, the efficiency, and how quickly they can do tasks. So the same problem is with LifeFloor. They have issues with redundancy in data entry. They have issues with repeated tasks, and they have a lot of places in their workflows where they do manual data entry. And we are here to help resolve that problem. So a quick agenda before we begin. We'll go into the overview of the problem a little bit further. We'll go into the recommendation right away. We'll talk about why we recommend our solution. We'll go into how we're going to recommend it with the pilot project, and then we're going to end with financial impacts, and then lastly, a summary. So a quick overview of the issue. This right here is the workflow of the current process to design a floor, quote the floor, and eventually send that quote to the customer. As you can see, the process is not streamlined. There's a lot of back and forth communication between the sales manager, the design team, and the shared services, as well as the customer. The process has a lot of areas where there's redundant data entry, and there's a lot of areas where people have to manually enter their data. And this is causing a lot of issues with a backlog. Many jobs are not able to be done on time. There's not able to be an estimated quote that's accurate for the customer, and there's a lot of delays and inefficiencies. So what do we recommend to fix this? Well, we recommend introducing automation. Now, what specifically? We recommend automating specific parts of the workflow. First, and we'll go into them, we recommend automating the initial design process with the customer and the sales manager using a CPQ. So what is a CPQ? It is a platform that allows the customer, the sales manager, and the design team to dynamically create designs. In this case, it'll be for floor tiles, and it will allow them to see prices dynamically as well, because the system will hold prices based on previous tiles, previous data entry. And with that CPQ, the back and forth between the sales manager and the design team and the customer will be shortened and streamlined. Next, we recommend automating the data entry of the tile counts or the parts into their CRM NetSuite software. So as you can see, the design team, after the design is done, will manually count the tiles and enter them into the spreadsheet. And the shared services team will enter them again, the same counts. They'll manually enter the same counts again. So we recommend not doing this twice, not making it redundant by automating the process and automatically importing it into NetSuite. And then lastly, we want to automate the tile counts based on standard orders. So LifeLore has two types of orders, standard and custom. Standard are based on previous templates they'll have. Since standard orders are based on previous templates, we recommend automating that tile count so that the design team can really focus on counting the custom tiles, and we will get into that a little bit further. So here's the workflow after we recommend our solutions. As you can see, we have each of our automations within the process. We've separated them by custom and standard. With standard, you can see the CPQ comes in right after the sales manager and customer coordinate. The design team will send it straight to an AI that will read the tile counts, and that will be sent straight to NetSuite so that shared services can do their work. And with the custom orders, same process, but we don't recommend using an AI to count tiles, which we will explain further. And everything, again, will be automated directly into NetSuite. So now we want to talk about why we recommend our technologies, why we recommend automating these processes. So first, we're going to go into the design, the CPQ. As I mentioned, the CPQ is a way to dynamically create designs and dynamically create complex designs, which LifeLore has complex custom designs. And not only can you dynamically create that, you can also see the prices more accurately based on data from previous sources. Instead of having to go to the manual that LifeLore has and find data on previous floors, they can more accurately create a quote for a customer so that the customer is able to make a business decision more accurately. And a research article from Tampere University also supports these benefits. They support that it can help create complex product structures and it can create more accurate calculations of quotes. And the same article did a small case study into Bronto Skylift, which is another company that creates skylifts for trucks or for fire engines that need to be personalized based on what building they're needed for, what service they're for. So again, a customizable product that use CPQ to help them efficiently quote products. And the same article quoted that it will increase productivity for quoting by 33%, which will help the customer understand faster how much money they'll need for the project. Now I'll pass it off to Pragya to talk about our AI solution.
So one of the further ways we want to automate the process is using AI, specifically Azure, because it's not as costly compared to other cloud services, and because we're already using Sheets for the importing and exporting data. So this will be really easy to integrate the process even further to kind of untie that knot in the pipeline that LifeLore currently has. And overall, it will increase the efficiency because the design team only has to really worry about importing the data into the AI function. And then after that, all they need to do is pass it off to the next team to worry about the further data that is needed to be streamlined. So just to go more into the Azure workflow, what we plan to do is just have the design team input the data. We're going to be using an Azure service called Computer Vision API. And what that's going to do is it's going to take the data, take the original designs from the standard plan, and it's going to count the tiles individually. It's going to then place a number, and we're just going to use optical recognition to actually take the text from it and turn it into something that turn it into like a table that is easy to read and that we can input into the CRM. Then what we're going to do is, since we can't directly transfer the Azure to the Sheets, we actually need to use a program called Logic Apps to basically trigger the Sheets conversion. And well, it's basically kind of giving the Sheets part, a phone call and saying like, hey, can you please create a file so that we can export this data? And then finally, the data can be exported to the file service that we will be talking about later on in the presentation. And this might seem like we're adding like a lot more things to the workflow, but it's really, what we're really doing is just automating a good chunk of the design team's standardized processing so that it can just overall create like a more even workflow. We don't have that huge knot that's currently in their system right now. So just to, I mentioned a lot, like I kind of mentioned the bottleneck a bit, and what's happening right now is that the design team is kind of getting that a lot of data. But if we kind of divide it into standard and custom and we kind of automate that standard part, it kind of frees up some of the burden for the design team and it creates a more seamless flow between the operations. Okay, so another thing that we plan to do, once we get that tile count data, we're going to automate the import process. And this is going to be beneficial because right now, what we noticed about the tile floor plan system is that they're doing double data entry, and this is very unnecessary. It can easily be solved with an automatic data import. What we're going to do is we're going to take the data that we export from the tile count from Azure Sheets into the Skyvia file sharing, and then we're going to take that and basically we're going to just take that and give it to NetSuite, and it'll just be easier because then the data entry person doesn't have to manually enter all of the data from the sheets into the NetSuite, and they'll just have basically one job freed up for them. This will result in a quality increase and a productivity increase overall.
And after we have implemented the Azure AI and the CPQ, we want to implement Skyview. This will help us transfer the data entry from the sheets to the NetSuite CRM that's already existing in a more automated way. The good thing about this is that it has no software installation required, and there's no particular coding needed to implement this into the workflow. And it's a universal cloud system, which means that it's easier to use. And there's also real-time data synchronization, so there'll be automated backups, and overall production will increase.
So a little bit about how much it'll cost. So we talked about what our solution is, why, and now we're going to go into costs. These are estimated per year because each of the licenses are typically by month. So we've estimated per year. The CPQ will cost about $17,280 due to the 6 employees that will need to use it. The Azure API will cost $16,020. Logic apps, which will go with the Azure AI, will cost $803. And lastly, Skyvia is $948. So total, it'll be about $20,651 per year, which is well under the requirement that they set for spending about $100,000 on an investment like this.
So after implementing all of these software, we want to start with a pilot project. We want to test it out with the pilot project. So our objective is to check whether our implementation will be able to create a positive difference for our customers. So the 2 questions that we want to ask is the timeline that is going to be represented for this trial project after implementing these softwares, will it be less than any previous project that was implemented by LifeFloor? Was it less? And were the customers able to be satisfied with the accurate representation of the price quote? And was it in a timely manner?
So we do want to talk about a little bit of the risk that could have popped up from this. We are implementing multiple new technologies, multiple new solutions, and the employees might not want to integrate that into their work environment. They might be a little bit resistant to incorporating multiple of these technologies. So what we recommend is using change management principles to ensure that this transition can be smooth. Microsoft actually used these three principles to help transition their new business intelligence platform smoothly and effectively this year, actually. So what they did was first run pilot projects to test how the user would feel. As we mentioned, we will be running a pilot project. Next, we recommend to be prepared to answer any questions or concerns that the employees have about these technologies. If they need clarifications, if they don't feel comfortable using it, we need to be able to answer those questions. And then lastly, we really need to emphasize the importance of having these technologies, having this automation. As we mentioned throughout the presentation, there are a lot of benefits that we've noted, which would come from this, which comes from time saved, cost saved, reduced data entry, reduced manual entry. And not only does that help the business, but it actually helps the employees too. Because when they have less time spent on tasks that are very manual, they can spend more time on more complex, more tasks that would engage them a little bit more and keep them engaged in the job. So when you emphasize the importance of that, you create desire and awareness for the change.
So overall, just to wrap things up, what we plan to do is implement a CPQ that makes price quoting easier. We want to implement AI, which will help automate parts of the process. And we want to create a file system, or we want to implement a file system that will help the employees upload documents and go back and forth. We're hoping that that implementing a pilot process will help us first validate whether ideas will be feasible in the long run. And we want to make sure that this project is going to increase not only productivity, but employee and customer satisfaction.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
AI sounds super cool. But can you tell me, like, I'm not really that familiar with how all that works. It's, like a cool buzzword right now. But when I hear Azure API, to me, I think that's like a thing a programmer does. And we're designers and floor manufacturers. So how do I take my design file and is there a program? How does the AI part work more specifically?
Yeah, so for the API is just like a fancy word for application, and it has like we have like our own pre-built model. So if there's someone who like doesn't have that much experience with like doing actual coding, it's easy to like set up on their own.
We can set it. Are we gonna set it up? Who's gonna set it up? Are you gonna set it up or are we gonna set it up? Because I don't know how to do that.
Oh. I don't think we would make you set it up because we know that, like we said, there could be a limitation on the customers or the employee side about picking up the technology. So we want to make sure we're delivering something to you that's ready to use, that you can just click a button and send something automated through the system. So we wouldn't make you guys do any coding or set anything up like that.
Is that captured in your $20,000 investment cost?
The cost to use it? Yeah, we have more of a breakdown.
What cost to implement it? Because if you have to do something, I presume I'm gonna have to pay you to do it.
Yeah, and these are the costs for users. So this would be our costs to do your transactions. So that's estimated based on 75 cents per 1,000. The transactions are basically us taking your data and putting it into the system, and then the system does its job and then sends the data to the next system.
Thank you.
So you talked about, how the AI is going to do all the tile counting, et cetera. So does that mean the design team would still be doing the initial design in AutoCAD and Illustrator, and then they would be transferred for the tile counts?
Yes, yes.
And then my other question is, you talked a little bit how this would be for standard projects, but LifeFloor is going more and more towards custom designs. So would this help with any of the bottleneck that occurs with custom projects?
Also, I mean, custom slide, sure. Okay.
Yeah, so in the case it was mentioned that custom tiling still requires a human touch because a lot of them are like very curved and customized, so there isn't really a standard template for it. But it's kind of more of like, we decided that for like more of the next steps kind of thing as AI We're kind of like in the AI dark ages right now with how like it can pretty much go anywhere and it's advancing so fast. It's like becoming hard to regulate, but there's still like a lot.
Did you, do you have any information on what the total time savings, either effort and or duration that you could address by implementing this solution?
We don't have exact numbers for that. We couldn't exactly
Yeah.
estimate how much it would save, but we know that based on the figures in terms of percentages, how it would save, there certainly would be a time save. I mean, the natural movement from manual data entry to automation will save time.
But directionally, I don't need accurate. Am I gonna save 20? Are we gonna save 50%? What are we thinking?
Well, we have, based on our percents, like, we could estimate. I guess with these figures, you could save about 50% of the time. And since that standard right now is more of the orders, even though custom might be increasing, even though standard is more of the orders, that is more of the process that's automated. So I think they would be able to save a significant 50% amount of the time that the design team would need to count, and also the time that the shared services would need to re-enter data into NetSuite.
Okay, thanks.
So there's a lot of integrations here. There's a lot of new applications, and I presume all of these will integrate with our existing Slack and other tools. What do you estimate would be the support that you would need for the in-house team to manage the integrations and the supportability of these things?
Yeah, I think a lot of the integrations will be focused on change management. I think we need some sort of change management process, and we don't have an exact, way to get that. You could hire new people, but in order to avoid hiring new people, you could also train existing employees with change management. That would help with integrating the environment. And in terms of support, many of our licenses have built-in support through the provider. So if there's any issues like that, we're paying for support from them so they can help in terms of technical support in that aspect.
Who would my team go to if one of those things breaks? Do we have to call many different vendors, or where do we go if this stops working?
Okay, so good question. We do have multiple vendors. The CPQ is through NetSuite, so you'd be able to go through NetSuite for that. But for Azure and for Skyvia, they are separate platforms, and unfortunately, we would have to go to those specific vendors for help. We didn't have in the cost figures a team that could help you, mainly because we didn't want to hire someone else and hire new people to do that, because the whole point of our system is to avoid hiring people for helping manually enter data and helping count tiles. So we didn't have that in our figures.
You've said it a lot, but I don't know these systems on that side. What does CPQ stand for?
It stands for compute, price, and quote.
And that helps us on the front end with the sales team.
Yes, it does. It will help create a more accurate quote, a soft quote for the customer that needs the quote quicker.
Which step does that eliminate for us?
It helps, it doesn't eliminate a step, but it helps the accuracy of the quote better, which I think would help the customer in the long run, and it could drive in more customers as well.
In your research, do you know if in the design of the systems that you're recommending, we work with partners in different facilities, and to be able to move the data from the analysis and the design to ultimately to another provider who's going to create the tiles and cut them and do all that? Was there any research in what you found of what those file types are? Is it, how do you move the data? What systems can it be integrated with?
Yeah, so the design documents can remain PDFs or whatever is currently being used, because the AI will be able to read those PDFs. And with our, systems that are going to read the data, they're going to import it into a Google Sheet. So Google Sheets, we can continue to use Google Sheets because it can be shared easily with the installer, for example. And then after that, the data from the Google Sheet goes into NetSuite. And so any data integrations with NetSuite would need to be changed because it can be directly integrated with NetSuite.
Whatever we have for NetSuite today totally would work.
Stay the
It's,
same.
it's the NetSuite to Google Docs and the AI. It's gonna,
Exactly,
okay,
yeah.
gotcha.
We have technologies to help that integrate into NetSuite.
Are there any options, any tools, mobile ability? So our sales teams can, in the field, can do any type of dynamic designing or any of those functionalities included with CPQ?
We have not looked into that yet, but I think it would be important to address that because being able to go directly to the customer with the mobile would help. And I think Oracle CPQ, if we look into it more, should be able to have a mobile integration option. And if not, we can look into that further.
Great.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
thank you very much.
The judges will give you feedback at 10:30. So return here at 10:30, if you'd like your feedback. And then, as a reminder, you're not permitted to watch any other, preliminary rounds. Okay, correct. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.